My sister made an Instagram just to post a video of me getting kicked out. It went viral. Hundreds of thousands watched. My mom cried on camera. I gave her everything. My dad threw my things into the street. My sister mocked, the freeloader's finally gone. I watched once. Downloaded it. 1 week later, they discovered what I had done. That's when the screaming started. My name is Hannah. I'm 28 years old. And last week, I found out my sister had made a new Instagram account just to post a video of me getting kicked out. The reel that blew up wasn't some shaky phone clip. It was edited like a reality show with sad piano, quick cuts, captions saying things like kicking the freeloader out. It opens with my mom on the couch looking into the camera and saying, I gave her everything and she gave nothing back. Then it jumps to my dad in the driveway, throwing my clothes and boxes into the street like they were trash. My sister is behind the camera narrating in this calm voice about tough love and setting boundaries with adult children who refuse to grow up. At the end she laughs and says, the freeloader is finally gone, and tells people to share if they relate. By the time I saw it, the views had already climbed into the hundreds of thousands. Strangers were cheering my family on in the comments, calling me lazy and entitled, saying I was the kind of adult child that needed a wake-up call. I sat in a coffee shop in downtown Chicago, listening to people talk online about a version of me that does not exist. I watched the reel once all the way through, then I watched it again with the sound off. Then I saved it to my phone, uploaded a copy to my cloud, and sent it to my work email. 1 week later, my family found out what I did with that video. That was the day the screaming really started. If you want to know how one Instagram reel turned their little stunt into the worst decision they ever made, keep listening. When people online called me a freeloader, what they did not see was that I moved out of my parents' house the first time at 22, right after I graduated. I got my own tiny place near the train line, worked late nights as a junior designer, lived on frozen meals and bad coffee, and slowly moved my way up to a UX job at a fintech app downtown. I was not rich, but I paid my bills, paid my student loans, went to the gym when I could, and I liked the feeling of unlocking my own front door. I only moved back home because my parents asked me to. About a year and a half ago, my dad called and said his back was getting worse from driving delivery trucks. My mom's hours as a receptionist at the dental clinic had been cut, and they were falling behind on bills. My sister had already come back home and set up camp in the basement talking about how she was building her brand, and could not handle a 9-to-5 right now. My dad said, just for a few months we need you. So I gave up my place, put most of my stuff in storage, and moved back into my old bedroom in Aurora. From the first month, I was the one writing the biggest checks. I sent my parents $1,300 toward the mortgage and utilities, bought most of the groceries on my card, paid for repairs when the air conditioning died in July, and when a pipe burst in the winter. Over 18 months, I put down more than $30,000 into a house that was not mine. My sister handed over a couple hundred here and there when she felt like it, and spent the rest of her time filming little day in my life videos, in a house I was quietly keeping afloat. The part that really twisted the knife was how my parents talked about me when they thought I was not listening. To my face they said they were grateful that they did not know what they would do without me. To their friends, and some of our relatives, they told a different story. They said I had moved back because I could not handle adult life in the city, that I was struggling, that they were letting me stay so I could get my act together. My mom loved calling me her boomerang child, like it was a cute joke. My dad made comments about how at least one of his girls still needed him. They left out the part where I was paying more than either of them every month. 3 months before that Instagram video, I told them I had found a small studio in Chicago close to the office, and that I would be moving out again. I promised I would help them build a real budget, showed them how much my sister could afford to pay if she took a full-time job, instead of waiting on brand deals that never came. The conversation went from quiet to explosive in about 10 seconds. They called me selfish, accused me of abandoning them in their hardest season, said real family sacrifices. Real daughters do not walk away when things get uncomfortable. I moved anyway. I signed the lease, carried my boxes up the stairs, and started sleeping in my own space again. A month later, while most of my friends still thought I lived in Aurora, my parents and my sister dragged out some of the boxes I had left in their garage, set up their little performance in the driveway, and filmed themselves pretending to throw me out for the internet. That is the version of me the world saw, the lazy daughter finally getting what she deserved. The version they never mentioned was the one who kept their lights on. The night I saw the reel for the first time, I didn't comment, I didn't text, and I didn't call. I sat there in my studio with my laptop open and my phone on the table, and made a different choice. If my family wanted to turn my life into content, then I was going to treat it like a case, not a fight. I started by pulling up my banking app and scrolling back 18 months. Every transfer labeled rent or mortgage, every Zelle to my parents, every utility payment I had made from my account, every grocery run that cleared for $300 at a time. I exported PDFs, downloaded statements, highlighted the line items with their names on them. I dug up the emails from the bank when I paid to fix the air conditioning, the invoice from the plumber when the pipe burst, the receipt from the new water heater that went on my credit card because my dad's was maxed. Then I opened the folder with my lease for the studio in Chicago, the emails confirming my move-in date, the photos I had sent my friends of the empty apartment on the day I got the keys. All of it clearly dated weeks before the day my parents and my sister filmed their kicking me out scene in the driveway. Next I went back to Instagram and watched my sister's stories from the last year, saving anything that showed her bragging about living at home rent-free, posting hauls, or talking about how she was focusing on growing her platform instead of working some soul-crushing office job. I screen-recorded my mom's Facebook posts, where she called me her boomerang kid, and hinted that I couldn't handle city life. Every time they had rewritten me as a burden, I saved it. By Monday I had a folder on my desktop labeled simply Home. On Tuesday I took a long lunch and went to a law office in the loop that a coworker had recommended when her cousin went through a messy business dispute. I sat across from a woman in a navy blazer, slid my laptop around, and played the Instagram reel. I watched her eyebrows go up when my sister called me a freeloader, heard the little sound she made when I clicked over to the folder with all the payments. She read through the transfers, the invoices, the lease, the screenshots of my parents' and sister's posts. Then she looked at me and said very calmly that what they had done was not just cruel, it was potentially defamatory, and that the fact I had already moved out when they filmed the video made their story clearly false. She talked about defamation, about intentional infliction of emotional distress, about reputational damage in my field. If someone from work saw that reel without context, I listened, and for the first time since moving back home, I felt like someone was actually naming what had been happening to me. Before I left, we drafted the first documents to file a lawsuit. That night when I got home, I took one more step. I wrote a short, polite email to my dad's company's HR inbox, to the general address at my mom's clinic, and to the 2 small brands my sister had tagged in her content. I attached the reel, attached a simple timeline, and attached a couple of those bank statements. I did not rant or threaten. I just told them that if they saw that video and wondered who I was, this was the missing context. Then I closed my laptop, turned my phone face down, and waited for the week to start. The papers went out on a Thursday. I was at my desk fixing the flow on a checkout screen when my phone started lighting up. First it was my mom calling 3 times in a row, then my dad, then my sister. Then the group chat that had been dead for weeks suddenly came back to life with a string of messages, all caps and question marks. I ignored the calls and watched the previews roll in. My mom started with, "How could you do this to your family?" Then slipped into, "I thought you loved us." Then into, "I am having a panic attack. Please pick up." My dad sent one long paragraph about how this was a joke taken too far. How they were just trying to make light of a hard situation. How I was overreacting. He called the lawsuit a tantrum. He said, "Real adults handle things privately." My sister skipped straight to insults. She called me vindictive, dramatic. Said I was trying to destroy her career over one video. Said everyone knew I was sensitive and could not take a joke. In between the texts were screenshots of the emails I had sent to their jobs. "How dare you drag work into this?" My dad wrote, "You are messing with our livelihood." My mom asked if I wanted her to lose her job after everything she had sacrificed. My sister wrote that brands were already messaging her, asking if she was in legal trouble and if they needed to pause collaborations. For a few hours my phone did not stop buzzing. I put it face down, finished my tasks, and did not answer a single call. That night, standing at my kitchen counter with a frozen dinner and my laptop open, I watched the first visible cracks appear. My sister's Instagram story, usually a constant stream of coffee cups and outfit videos, went dark. My mom posted a vague status about being betrayed by the people you raise. My dad's Facebook went from sharing the real to quietly unsharing it. By the weekend, my mom told me in another long text that people at her clinic had seen the video and my follow-up email. She said a couple of co-workers had pulled her aside and asked if everything at home was all right, not in the supportive way she wanted, but in the, "we saw you publicly humiliate your kid" kind of way. My dad said his supervisor had called him into the office and asked him to explain why he was in a viral video throwing his daughter's belongings into the street and talking about cutting her off. My sister said a client had canceled a freelance project saying they did not want to be associated with family drama. None of them apologized. Every message, every voicemail circled back to the same script. "We were just trying to teach you a lesson. We did not think anyone important would see it. You are blowing this out of proportion. You are hurting us more than that video ever hurt you." Hearing it all laid out like that, the way they measured harm by how much it bounced back on them, only made me more certain I had done the right thing. I did not need them to suddenly understand. I needed them to live with the story they had written. This time with the missing pages glued back in. It took me 3 days to pick up when my mom called. By then, the initial wave of yelling had slowed down into these long, guilt-soaked voicemails. When I finally answered, she started crying before I could even say hello. She said she only agreed to record the video because she was embarrassed. Not embarrassed about what they had done to me, embarrassed about me moving out. Snorts, she told her friends at church and her little social circles, that I had come back home because city life was too hard. Because I was lost and they were helping me get back on track. When I moved out again, those same people started asking uncomfortable questions. Why did she let me leave when they were struggling so much? Why her other daughter still did not have a real job? My mom said the video was supposed to show that they were strong parents setting boundaries, that they were not just sitting back letting their grown daughter walk all over them. It was about saving face. My dad got on the phone and added his version. He said the reel was a way to make light of a hard situation, to turn their stress into something productive, maybe even to grow a platform that could bring in extra money. He said my sister had convinced them it was a good idea, that people loved family content, that it would make other parents feel seen. Then my sister's voice cut in on speaker, and she dropped the honesty my parents were dancing around. She said straight out that the video was good content. It was emotional. It was dramatic. It was the kind of thing that goes viral. She said she had been stuck under 10,000 followers for months, and this pushed her over 30. She said brands were finally starting to notice her, and that I was ruining everything because I could not handle my image being anything less than perfect. Listening to them, all 3 of them, twist this into my problem, something in me finally snapped in a different way. I told them calmly that I had the receipts, the payments, the lease, and that I was not backing down. My mom threatened to tell the whole family I was trying to destroy them. I told her she could tell whoever she wanted. The twist was someone else beat her to it. My aunt, her older sister, called me the next night. She had already seen the reel weeks ago, had thought it was cruel, but stayed out of it. Then my mom had called her sobbing about the lawsuit. And for the first time my aunt heard the numbers, how much I had been paying, how long I had been home, how the video was filmed after I left. My aunt has never been good at keeping her opinions to herself. She said she believed me, that she had always suspected there was more to the story, and that she was tired of watching my mom play the victim whenever anyone challenged her. By the end of the call, my aunt had offered to talk to any lawyer who needed a character witness, and had already started sending voice notes to cousins and siblings in our family group chat, laying out the real timeline. Overnight, the chat split. Some people sent emojis and stayed quiet. Others messaged me privately saying they were sorry they had liked the reel when they thought it was real. My uncle tried to play peacekeeper and convinced my dad we should all meet somewhere neutral and talk like adults. That is how I ended up sitting on a bench in a park downtown, watching my parents walk toward me with my uncle trailing behind them like a referee. The Snorts conversation went the way you would expect. My dad said I was making them look crazy. I pointed out that they had posted themselves acting crazy with no help from me. My mom said no one would have cared if I had just laughed it off. I asked her if she would laugh off being called a freeloader to 500,000 strangers. My uncle tried to say there had been mistakes on both sides, that family should forgive, that lawsuits were extreme. I told him forgiveness and accountability are not the same thing. While all of that was happening in real life, the internet was doing its own thing. My sister's account came back from a short suspension with a warning for harassment and bullying. A couple of the brands she had tagged quietly untagged themselves from the reel, or removed her from their pages. And at my job, where I had been dreading sideways looks, something else happened. My manager called me into a small conference room, closed the door, and said he had seen the video. Then my email with the context. He told me HR had flagged it in case it turned into workplace harassment, but that as far as the company was concerned, I had done nothing wrong. He asked if I felt safe, if I needed time off, if I wanted them to block certain numbers from calling the front desk. For the first time in weeks, I felt like an adult in a room full of adults, not a child on trial in my own family. My parents hated that. They were used to being the ones who controlled the story. Now, between my aunt, my CO workers, and the brands my sister wanted so badly, other people were finally seeing the whole picture. A few days after that park meeting, my dad showed up at my office building on his lunch break, holding a worn folder like it was evidence in his own case. He texted and said he was downstairs, said it was urgent. So I met him outside where the delivery trucks lined the alley. He opened the folder right there on the sidewalk. Inside were past due notices on the house in Aurora, letters from the bank about being behind on the mortgage, credit card statements with balances that made my stomach flip, and a couple of old medical bills from when his back injury had been at its worst. He spread them out like a fan and said, "This is what you're doing to us." He told me they were 2 payments behind on the house, that his hours had been cut again at work, that the credit cards were maxed from groceries, gas, and he admitted quietly, some of the equipment my sister had needed for content. He said when I lived at home and sent $1,300 every month, it had been the difference between treading water and going under. Now they were sinking. He did not mention my sister's contributions, so I asked. He shrugged and said she paid what she could. That she was still building her brand, that it would pay off eventually. Then he looked at me like I was supposed to fill the silence with an offer. He said, "If you would just come back for a year, or at least send what you were sending before, we could catch up." He said we could forget the video, pretend it never happened. I told him I was sorry they were in trouble, but I was not moving back in, and I was not going to become their unpaid safety net again. I told him there were other options like selling one of the cars, cutting cable, and telling my sister she needed a real full-time job, instead of waiting for a sponsorship that might never show up. He snapped that I sounded just like those people online who tell poor folks to stop buying coffee, that I had no idea how hard it was to be in his position. Then he folded the papers back into their folder and walked away without saying goodbye. That same night, my sister posted another reel. This time not a glossy production, but a shaky video of a nearly empty fridge and a stack of envelopes on the kitchen table. She talked about how her wealthy designer sister was punishing her parents, how they were months behind because I had pulled my support, how some people care more about their public image than their family. For a few hours the comments were full of sympathy. Then someone linked the old reel. Someone else posted screenshots from her page with all the bar nights, the shopping trips, the new camera she had bragged about buying on credit. People started asking where all that money had gone, if she was really that helpless, why she had filmed herself humiliating me and was now crying on camera. By the next morning, the tone had flipped. Words like manipulative and emotional abuse showed up in her comments. She turned off replies. A week later, my mom and my sister tried one more tactic. They drove into the city without telling me, came to my building in Lakeview, and asked the front desk to call me down. The concierge rang my apartment and said there were 2 women in the lobby who said they were family and needed to see me. I told him I did not feel safe meeting them and asked him not to let them upstairs. While they were arguing with him about it, my aunt pulled into the loading zone like some kind of chaotic guardian angel. She had already heard they were coming because my mom had called her asking her to talk sense into me. Instead, my aunt walked into the lobby, stepped between them and the desk, and told them they were harassing me. She reminded my mom out loud and in front of a stranger that they had filmed a fake eviction for likes, and now they were mad there were consequences. The concierge asked all 3 of them to leave. My aunt texted me later, said they had driven off in tense silence. In the middle of all this, my lawyer called with an update. The judge had denied their motion to get the case thrown out. We were moving into discovery, which meant every bank statement, every text, every email about money or me would be fair game. My parents complained that lawyers were too expensive, that they were drowning in fees. I thought about how many times I had heard them say, "You made your bed, now lie in it," and wondered if they realized they were finally getting a taste of their own advice. By the time discovery really got going, my parents looked like they had aged 10 years. Their lawyer had gone through months of their messages about me, the jokes about me being an ATM, the texts where they talked about using the situation for content, and the exact thread where they planned to kick her out video weeks after I had already moved into my studio. One afternoon my attorney called and said their side wanted to talk settlement again, and this time it sounded serious. A few days later we sat across from each other in a bland conference room, with buzzing fluorescent lights, and a pot of coffee that tasted like it had been sitting there since the morning. Their lawyer did most of the talking at first, sliding a printed document across the table like a peace offering. The offer went like this: they would permanently remove anything online that showed me as a freeloader. They would post a public apology admitting the video was staged, and that I had been supporting the house financially. And they would pay me $10,000 over time as part of the settlement. My dad stared at the table the whole time, hands folded like he was in church. My mom kept glancing between me and the lawyer, eyes red but dry, like she had run out of tears and was running on habit. My sister sat in the corner of the room, arms crossed, jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscles jumping. You could tell she hated the idea of putting any of this in writing. When it was my turn to speak, I told them very plainly that $10,000 did not impress me. Over the last couple of years, I had poured 3 times that into their mortgage and bills without a contract, without any security, just because they asked. No settlement check was going to make that disappear or magically make the way they treated me feel okay. What I cared about, I told them, was the part they obviously hoped would be quiet. The public apology in their own names where they said clearly that they had lied about me. I wanted them to write that the story in the video was false, that I was not a freeloader, that I had been paying the majority of the household expenses, and that they understood that what they did hurt me and damaged my reputation. Their lawyer shifted in his chair and tried to soften the language, suggesting phrases like misrepresented instead of lied, misunderstanding instead of false story. I said no. If we were going to end this without going in front of a judge, they needed to be honest for once, not just careful. There was a long silence. My mom finally said in a small voice that she did not want everyone thinking she was a bad mother. I told her she should have thought about that before she performed being a good mother for the internet, while trashing me in the comments. My dad said this felt like public humiliation. I reminded him I had been publicly humiliated first by them. My sister muttered that this was going to kill her brand if anyone screenshotted it. My lawyer looked at me and I nodded. This was the line. A month after that meeting, the rest of the dominoes fell. The bank finally moved forward on the house in Aurora. There had been too many missed payments and not enough money to catch up. My parents packed up the place they had lived in for over 20 years, the place they had been so proud to film in, and moved into a small, tired-looking apartment across town. No front porch, no yard, thin walls where you could hear the neighbor's TV through the bedroom. My dad's hours at the delivery company never fully recovered after the attention from the video and the time he took off for meetings. Eventually he picked up shifts at a distribution warehouse on the edge of the city, coming home sore and quiet. My mom's hours at the dental clinic never went back to normal either. Whether it was because of the drama or just the business changing, she ended up taking a full-time cashier job at a big box store. She went from talking about patients in offices to talking about price checks and rude customers. My sister's Instagram did not explode in the way she had imagined. It imploded. After enough reports and flagged posts, her main account disappeared one morning. Her profile photo, her reels, her follower count, all gone. She tried to start another page, but the algorithm did not love her the way she had hoped, and people were quick to call her out the second they recognized her. She got a job as a barista in the city, working early mornings and weekends, sharing a cramped walk-up with 2 roommates and a cat that was not hers. The girl who had once laughed on camera about the freeloader finally being gone was now splitting rent and scrubbing syrup off counters for a living. Then came the apology. It did not come as a dramatic video or a long thread. It was a paragraph on my mom's Facebook page, and a matching post on my dad's written with help from their lawyer, but posted under their names. In it, they said the video of me being kicked out had been staged, that I had already moved out at the time it was filmed, that the comments suggesting I was a freeloader were not true. They wrote that I had contributed significantly to household expenses while living at home, and that they understood their actions had harmed my reputation and caused me pain. They apologized directly to me and to anyone who had been misled. There were no dramatic tears, no background music, no trending hashtags. The posts did not go viral. They got a couple dozen likes, some awkward heart emojis from older relatives, a few comments from neighbors and church ladies saying things like, "Glad you cleared this up," or "Family is complicated." But the people who needed to see it saw it. My aunt screenshotted it and sent it to me with a simple "about time." My boss saw it and closed the loop in his mind. The cousins who had quietly believed the worst about me, or at least wondered, now had the truth in writing. And most importantly, I saw it. I read it once slowly, letting each sentence sink in. Not because I thought the words magically fixed what had happened, but because for the first time in this entire mess, my parents had told the truth about me in public. Then I screenshotted it, forwarded it to my lawyer, saved a copy in the same folder where I had kept the real and the bank statements, and muted both of their accounts. People sometimes ask if I forgave them, if things ever went back to how they were before. The honest answer is there is no version of before to go back to. Trust is not a light switch. We see each other on holidays now in larger group settings. There are hugs that feel more like polite rituals than real affection. We talk about traffic, weather, my job in the most surface-level way. They do not bring up the video, and I do not bring up the lawsuit. We keep everything hovering just above the real story. Like we are all scared that if we look down we will see the crater. I am not angry every single day. I am not waking up and replaying the reel in my head anymore. But there is a part of me that is different now, harder in places that used to be soft. I am careful about what I share, about who I let into my home, about how much access I give anyone, even people who share my last name. What I took from all of this was not just the satisfaction of watching their choices finally cost them something. It was a lesson I wish someone had taught me when I was younger, one that I hope anyone listening hears clearly. Family does not mean unlimited access to your life or your wallet. Love does not mean letting people weaponize your worst moments for strangers and then calling it a joke. Boundaries are not betrayal. Social media eats drama for breakfast and forgets it by dinner, but you are the one who has to live with the way you allowed yourself to be treated. Holding my parents and my sister accountable did not fix them, but it did something important for me. It reminded me that my story belongs to me, not to an algorithm and not to relatives who think views are worth more than respect. If you have ever watched someone you love turn you into contempt, if you have ever been told to take a joke while your dignity gets traded for likes, you are allowed to draw a line so firm it shocks them. You are allowed to choose truth over image, peace over a version of family that only exists on camera. And sometimes choosing fairness, choosing yourself is the first real act of love you have ever shown the person in the mirror. Our team at Revenge Mangan is dedicated to creating meaningful, well-crafted stories, and we promise that everything you see here is purely fictional. These scenarios are designed only to share lessons and provide educational, beneficial messages for our viewers. This script highlights the importance of healthy boundaries, self-respect, and honest communication within a family. It shows how harmful it can be to chase attention on social media at the cost of trust, and encourages viewers to think carefully before judging others.